Hello there, good morning, and welcome to my little corner of the internet on YouTube. My very little corner, but I'm happy to be in a little corner, but that's fine. It's sunny out, it's a lovely sort of late autumnal day, the light is golden, there's some mist and fog in the air, and I've got my head stuck in art, of course. I have been awake since about 5 o'clock. And I feel I may end up back in bed sooner than later again. I haven't had enough sleep, but that's another story. It's Sketchtember day 6, I believe, and day 6 is bay tree, bay leaf. So I've done some drawings of bay leaves with some of the berries on there, very simple, round, some handwritten title, and I've coloured these leaves with some markers I had delivery of yesterday, and I've been looking at them for quite a while, and I decided, right, I'm going to do this because the colours of these markers are not all, there's very few overlap with what I have in my chameleons, and there are similar ones in the Copics, but the Copics are such a pain to get out, but these look great. They're the Arteza Ever Blend markers, and I got the architecture set, which is full of the more vintagey, earthy tones that I particularly like at the moment. I couldn't see the point in buying any of the other sets or the big set, because a lot of the colours I wouldn't use. I'd love it if Arteza put together a completely vintage set, but perhaps I can do that myself once I work out what colours I like and what colours are missing. But so I thought I'd try them out, and they work the same as any alcohol marker. What can I say? They function, and they're great. These are them. They're triangular barrels, which are a bit different. They have a chisel tip or bullet tip end, and they have a chisel tip end. And I really don't know how often I will use a chisel tip end, because I don't. I might use the corners occasionally, fine lines. It'd be nice if they had a brush tip. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not sure if you can buy replacement tips that are brush tips, which I don't know, but a brush tip would be nice with the bullet tip, because the bullet tips are what I use mostly, because if you know me, you know my artwork, it tends to be insanely intricate, I think is the phrase. I have done a swatch of the Arteza, or the colours in the architecture set. I think it is just called architecture, not architectural. Architectural tones architecture set will do. I know which one it is. So I created this and printed it out. And the colours are lovely. That red is the only one that jars with me, because it is ever so bright in comparison to the others. And some of these blues, I think I'd have preferred, like they used to be perhaps a bluer, a greyer shade. But they'll work fine. So this red is the only one that really is not something I'm likely to use very often. I'd preferred another orange in there, I think, instead. But they're a nice range of colours. There's some lovely grey greens. That is absolutely lovely. The greens are beautiful. And I've got a lovely range of greys and greeny greys and so on. And the browns are lovely. These are nice colours over here, the yellows. So they'll blend with the orange. And, oh, excuse me, I'm snotty as anything again. Changing weather. So I've just put that the way where I can see it. And this is a drawing, which actually is that way up, but it doesn't fit easily underneath the camera. I've done this morning in the time I've been awake. What time is it now? Oh, it's 10 o'clock, so I've been awake for 5 hours. So I've done this, I've coloured that in. I've had breakfast, mostly, still on my cup of tea. And I thought that I would spend some time with this. I'll tell you what I am going to do. Oh, there we go. Paper trimmer. Let's do some paper trimming here. That will be quite good, just there. Fab. So a bit of paper left over. This is Canson marker paper. I did have some Arteza marker paper in the delivery yesterday, along with some cutters for that paper trimmer you saw there, the trimmer blades, because I had the one that was in there was really blunt and I was down to my last one that I could find. I suspect I have more hidden somewhere, but I'm not quite sure where they are. That's a whole different story. So this is a typically entangled one. I'm going to use the back of this Canson marker pad simply because it gives me a nice surface with a bit of give. And just in case the markers go through, I don't think they will, because I've used this marker paper recently with markers and they're fine. You just have to make sure you draw on the correct side of the paper, because one side, the back side, has a treatment that is quite plasticky or smooth in some way, and the markers just lay on the surface and they become pot. You put another layer down and you shift the layer underneath, so there's a treatment underneath there. Just saying. It's not a problem when you know, but if I don't keep track of which side is which when I take paper out, and yeah, I get into a pickle. So I'll do some colouring and perhaps some chatting. Okay, which two colours do I want these? So these are, one is sage green and the other one is faded green. And I'm going to do this, which is tip to tip blending. The chameleon pens that I love so much are set up to do this so easily. But it's been done with Copic markers for donkey's years, by artists and crafters, so it's no more, I suppose it's no more of a potch in using chameleons, except that it's easy not to match things up. Marker paper is so much nicer to use than sketchbook paper because the ink stays wetter longer and it blends a lot easier. And also you don't use as much ink to colour in because it doesn't get absorbed by the paper as much. And I know from experimenting that I can colour the marker paper with distress inks and still use markers on the top, which is not surprising, but it's something that I'll always check out really. So I do like these faded, dusty, earthy tones that here. I'm not quite sure how to describe them. Less saturated in colour perhaps, or greyer toned. It makes me happy. The other thing I thought about these pens is that as they're not too expensive, they'd be, and not too big and not too big and chunky. They are chunky, but the chameleon markers are really long, and although I can take a decent sized bag with me with stuff in, it's still a pain to have such large markers thrown in a bag or in a pencil case. Whereas with these, I wouldn't have a problem, now I've seen that they work, in actually taking them out and about with me when I finally get around to going out drawing and sketching, which today would be a nice day kind of, but I'm home today for a while, I think, because I know that I'm going to run out of energy at some point. Also, as the marker paper doesn't take up too much ink, it means that even with a little bit of the darker ink, you still get quite a long gradual fade, which is something that means you don't get too many lines in the blending. They are nice. They, I'm not a connoisseur of marker pens or I couldn't tell you if any of them are better than the other in terms of, you know, saturation of colour or the amount of ink in there. I'd expect that these, being big chunky barrels, would have a fair amount of ink and would last a long time. In comparison to, say, Copic chows. Copics and chameleons are more environmentally friendly because I can refill them with ink. I can buy ink to refill them. I think you can do it with the chows, because I haven't got the Copic sketches or any of the other, because there's Copic sketch and I know there's another Copic style of pen you can get. But the chows were what were available in my local stationers and hobby shop at the time. And so I tried some of those and I built up the full set of chows eventually. Chow. But I said, like a brush nib. Brush nibs are great, but like with the Copics, I'd prefer, instead of the chisel tip, a bullet tip, because then I have those options to use them. Brush tips are great for tiny places. Copics certainly. With chameleon pens, their brush tips they're designed to splay and spread out and be more like a brush, with hairs and fibres and what have you. Whereas the Copics are a particular kind of brush that you press it and it goes from thick, you can get thin to thick lines. And I know what I'm trying to say, but I'm not explaining myself very well. So, and the bullet nibs are mostly fine enough to get into little spaces, because I can be quite delicate in the use of them. It doesn't mean I always am, because I can be quite heavy-handed. Oddly, with markers, not so. I think it's because I know that isn't it funny how things work differently depending on the medium I'm using? Yeah. So I can actually use bullet pens to get into fairly small spaces, which is great. So they'll do. If anybody from Arteza ever listens to this, please, if you haven't got brush nibs, I will have a look and a hunt. Please consider getting them so they can be swapped out from with the chisel tips. So I've got a large area to fill it in. With the chameleons, I will use the brush tips. They're brilliant for doing that. But the blending is more problematic because you have to load so much of the other colour or the colourless blender into the pen that it can be hard to judge how much you've got. You have to the section you want to colour in, you have to split up into smaller sections, sort of like mentally, and overlap it all, and it doesn't always work out nicely, not for me anyway. But I rarely have large areas that need colouring to be done, and in that case I'd actually blend the colours in the way of putting as you do with Copics, not this tip to tip version, but where you'd actually put the lightest colour down, fill the area in, then the medium colour and blend, then the darkest colour and blend, and so on, to get as smoother blend as you can. And marker paper does help with that. It helps to keep the ink moist for longer so that it's easier to blend the colours, is the theory of it. And marker paper, it shouldn't, the pens don't bleed and feather to the side either, which is something that does happen with cartridge paper and other papers. Okay, let's see if we can. That looks okay. All right, let me just pop the lid on the sage, because I'm just going to do these in the palest of the colour for now. I have to say that the packaging for the markers is fab. It's very sturdy and well made, and each pen has got its own individual compartment. And there's colour swatches on the roof of the box, the top of the box, which is lovely. But as always, I like to swatch colours out in a medium I have, because what's on the box and what's on the pens isn't always what really is there. But you see, these really are lovely. I think they are. They're working. They're doing the job. What can I say? As long as something does the job, I'm a happy bunny, really, and that's all that matters. Okie dokes. Let's have a look. Let me try these. I am going to just pop the other pens back in the box while I think about them. I'm also checking I've put the right colour on each end, because that is an issue with me. I'm getting confused. Okay, I've got that one, and I've got, I wonder, oh, it's the wrong way round. I wanted the broad pen, the broad end, the chisel end might actually make it easier to do tip to tip blending, because it's got a bigger surface. So let's have a look. So I'm using, I'll tell you the colours now. This is Cantaloupe Orange, and I think it's Citrine Yellow. Oh no, that really hasn't blended. A lot of orange went into the tip. Possibly. But with marker paper I should be able to push it away and blend it backwards. Only drying time will tell, I think, there. Okie dokes, let's have a look. So what else, where else would I like this colour? Because I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do in what colour. Okay, let me have a think here. That's nice. And then let me have a look. Let me try the chiffon here. Just blend that. Okay. So that worked quite nicely. Okay, let's have a swap around the lids. Let's pop those there. Alright, let me try doing this another way. So this is the Cantaloupe Melon. So let me put a little bit of that down, and let's see if I can blend it out with these are the colours. So I'm trying a a dark to light blend here, and so go the other way with this one. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, that works better for me, I have to say that. So light to dark, or filling the space with the light colour and then using the others is the way for me to go forward, I think. I did draw on this marker paper with the Copic multi-liners. It's the fine liner pens that are Copic friendly. And I'm noticing that with these, they're picking some of the ink up, but not too much, not in too much of a noticeable way. But it's enough for me to think, okay, what's going on here then? Okay, let's do some of the paler orange, because it seems to work best as it would do if I use 3 colours here and then blend them out. Yeah. The other thing that's a bit confusing is the numbers on the markers go the opposite way to what you'd expect. So, for example, with the chameleon markers, the higher the number, the darker the marker is. With the Artezas, it's the other way round. It's the higher the number, the lighter colour is. I think. Yeah, the higher the number, the lighter the colour. So I think the same thing works with the same way that oh gosh, I've just put a lot of that mid-tone in there. It's okay, we can sort that. Just give all of that a chance to just dry. Missed some bits there, that's okay though. These are really quite lovely. Welcome to my weird world of colours. I never ever would have thought in a gazillion years that I'd be moving away from really bright colours and going into the more earthy, vintagey tones. I have done. And I'm quite happy about that, to be honest. It's definitely picked some of the Copic up there, but perhaps it won't be noticeable once it dries and I've layered colours, possibly. I say possibly because there is no guarantee with any of this. So how are you all doing? How's things in your part of the world? Life just potters along here for me, really. Yesterday was a funny old day. I say that often, you know, most of my days are funny old days. Yesterday I had an artsy morning. I didn't do a video. I think Sundays will be days that I don't do videos on going forward, just in case you're wondering. I have a meeting online every Sunday about 11 o'clock, and it's a bit of a rush. It always feels a bit of a rush and a kerfuffle to get everything done, whereas today on a Monday morning I've got the time to, you know, potch and potter today. I haven't got the pressure of any contracts at the moment. I have got contracts to do, but I just don't feel the pressure of having to get them done straight away. So there are times when I need to indulge myself in personal art, and there are times when I need to focus on contracts and commissions. And at the moment, it's that Sketchtember is giving me that opportunity to do a bit more in the way of personal art, and pushing my boundaries a little. And I'm still working with media to find out which media I particularly like to work with, and I'm definitely coming down on the side of markers. Why it's taken me so long to be accepting of this, who knows? Welcome to my weird and wonderful world. This is me. I think it's because I like loose watercolours and the way that people use watercolours so much. I'd love to be able to do this myself, and I'm just going to have to accept it's just not within my abilities for whatever reason. It doesn't matter what lessons I take, classes I take, I put things into action and things seem to work, and then it all goes to pot. And I'm doing exactly the same thing, but it just isn't working. On the back, you see, I didn't need anything underneath it. You can see the colours, but they are not bleeding through onto the page below. And they're not bleeding outside of the lines that I've drawn either, which is fabulous, because they do in my sketchbook. Okie dokes, let's pop these away. It's the chiffon yellow, which goes there. This one is the Cantaloupe Melon, which is that one. I do tend to keep things like markers really tidy. I don't like a desk full of them, because then you're scurrying around trying to find them. When they're organised in their little holder, I can always find them there. Okay, so let's have a look. Try. Go for this one. I've got beige, and I've got this dusty. Oh, I've got another orange. I've got a dusty orange here. That could have been useful here, actually. And what colour? Let's try the Citrine Yellow just to blend that out just a little. So that should be quite nice. Yeah, I think it will. I'll tell you what. I'll work tip to tip. And yeah, it's flooded this with a lot of colour, but that's fine. That'll be okay. Just have to be careful how much colour I add to this one. In theory, it should clean itself off. In practice, am I going to muck these markers up before I've got very far with them? I think it'll be fine. There might be some staining on the nib. So I was talking about yesterday. So I spent some time yesterday morning with the Sketchtember projects, and then taking photographs and creating social media posts, because I still do that, you know, on a Sunday. That's no biggie for me to do. It's the videoing and you know, I don't edit much, as you know, I'm not a big editor, but it's, yeah, don't want the beige. I haven't got. Just thinking. Yeah, I'll use the beige and see what that's like, because it could be nice. Here. If I want it more yellowy, then it's easy enough to make this more yellowy, because I can just do a glaze of colour over the top. Okay. That should clean up. I think it has. It's okay. Oh, let me pop the lid on this one. That end. And let's go to the other end and see. Just darken those areas up just a little bit. Spread it out while it's still damp. This is the one thing that strangely I dislike about markers, is having to swap pens over constantly. And yeah, I'm quite happy to do mixing chambers on chameleons. Isn't it funny? I think it's because I'm not trying to shuffle lots of pens in my hands, really. But it all works. It does eventually. Now, if I'm not happy with how dark that colour is once it dries, it's easy enough to go back and change it, to be honest. Okie dokes, that's looking okay. So interesting colour palette here. I like it, but I do have a lot more work to do here yet to work out what colours I really want to use and so on. And although this is my original one, there's no way I was going to try and colour on printer paper. I have scanned this in, so I have a digital copy of the drawing. So if I make a complete mess, I can always create one digitally. And what I may even do is scan in my swatches and use those as a guide for a... Put some moistness down there. The other thing this set could do with is a blender pen. Just realised that there's no colourless blender in here. Whether that's because you can buy them relatively inexpensively. And said that's the problem with these, is that they're not refillable, or they don't seem to be. You can buy the pens, replacement pens, in packs of 4, and they're really quite inexpensive. 4 of the same colour. Yep. So they seem to do the job, and they've got the colours suit me and my current palette aesthetics in particular. It actually makes quite a nice golden colour, like a vintagey goldy colour. This looks quite nice actually. So I'm enjoying. It doesn't take much to make me happy, it does have to be said. You know, quite happy colouring and drawing. It's always lovely how colour brings things to life. But even though there's no colourless blender, which I'd use for highlighted areas or to moisten the paper before I start to add colour to make it easier to blend, if that's what I needed to do, I don't have a problem really. But in some ways there not being a colourless blender here, because what do I do for highlights? Oh yeah, that's right, I use gel pens. Sakura Souffle is my favourite at the moment because it dries very opaque and it doesn't shift the colour underneath. Because this is alcohol ink, any gel pen would do, any white gel pen would work, I think. So let's have a look. Do I want to do that there? Yeah, I don't know. Perhaps of these. Yeah, they seem to work really well if you're on a budget. The I've seen a lot of these Ohuhu pens. I have to say they do a sketchbook for markers with marker paper in, and it's quite heavyweight, the paper. And I am tempted to get one of these sketchbooks to see what they're like, because that would be very useful if I'm planning on taking markers with me to use when I'm out in the wild. Well, or not so wild. Because the sketchbook then is really useful, because it's the marker paper, the books of marker paper I've got, the paper in there isn't bound very well, tightly. It's not designed to be. So it would be really lovely to have one that's bound. So I may order one and see what it's like. Apparently the pages are also double-sided, so you can use markers on both sides, which is interesting. So that's why the paper's so much thicker. There we go. I've just worked out this here is like some weird ammonite, isn't it? Yeah, I did not have that in my mind when I was creating that. I do have to say, tell you that. That was not my intention at all. Okay, let's take the Citrine Yellow and let's add some more yellowy tones here, because the brown is that the light brown is nice, but I just want it that warmer colour with a bit more to it. No doubt when the ink dries it will fade back a little, but I just think it will. Warm the colour up a bit, or just add a bit more colour to it. I think that actually works quite nicely, because it helps those browns to tie in with these areas here as well, because this is how my mind works sometimes without me realising it works that way. I know, weird. I'll tell you what I could do with here, because that orange does need a little bit of toning down. So we get plenty of that there. Use a bit of that Cantaloupe orange just to try to see if it will blend out a little bit. Not very well. And then there's a citrine. Blend that out a bit more. I think that works a bit better. That's got a, I'm sure that when it fades back, dries back, that will be much nicer than it was. And there are lines here which I don't really want, but that's my lack of expertise with markers or experience with them. And I can always disguise it. That's what highlighted dots are for and things like that. So there we go. You can see one of my other works in progress. I have a few now, don't I? And I've shown you my Sketchtember page for today, day 6, bay leaf. I've realised that as much as I love Deadly Dots list, it's very much going to be samey, so I may look for another list to use that will be a bit different for some of the others' days. Or perhaps I'll just choose to sketch something myself each day for fun without using a list, because there's only so many leaves I can draw that are similar in shape and vein pattern and flowers and colours. They're lovely, but there is a limit. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this and seeing a little look into these markers. I didn't say at the beginning, but I bought these myself. I'm not paid to review them or to recommend them in any kind of way. I'm not somebody who can give you really good, honest, thoughtful reflections on things like other artists can. They work. I like the colours. job done. You know, as far as I'm concerned. How long they're going to last, how much ink is in them, I don't know. That's only time will tell, and whether they'll dry out in time before I can use them all up, I don't know. But we shall see. Perhaps they'll become refillable in the future. That would be great, because plastic ending up in recycling or in landfill is not my idea of fun. But art is necessary. So some, you know, what can I do? But anyway, thank you for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's inspired you to try things. If you've been wondering about the Arteza markers, they work. You know, they are what they are, and if you're on a budget, I'm sure they're great. I know there are, I think the Ohuhus are cheaper still, and you can get other ones. But if they work for you, and that's great. I've got no idea how they compare with Copic. The chameleons, they seem, you know, they work. And the colours, some of these colours will work well with chameleon colours that I like. So, you know, what more can I say? I'm waffling. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your day. Find time to be creative. And it'd be lovely to see you back here for my next video. So take care until then. Bye-bye. Hoil.